The Port Hueneme City Council special meeting workshop today, Saturday, October 31st, 2015, here at 9:03. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Figg.
Here.
Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Sharkey.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Reese.
Here.
Mayor Schnapp.
Here. We have the agenda in front of us.
Vote approved. Second.
Any abstentions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
I have a question. I thought we were going to have a closed session today.
We are at 11:30 till 1, but I haven't had the chance to tell you yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's on the backside.
I see.
Doug, would you follow the order, please?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So we move on to item number 3, open forum. Anyone wishing to speak on matters not on the agenda may do so at this time. You have 3 minutes, and we've allocated 15 minutes at this point of the meeting for that. I do have one speaker card, and that is for Miss Beverly Kelly. So Beverly, would you mind coming up towards the front here? And I'll start the timer and notify you when there's a minute left. So hold on just a second. Okay.
Hi. I just came up here because I personally want to thank our present city manager for all that she's done. A lot of it, some of it's been in the newspaper, but a lot of it is not known because of the privacy rules for people that have been formerly employed and all that kind of stuff. The same thing is going on in Oxnard, and I'm taking nothing away from Greg Norhoff, but I think that she was called here to do a job. She's done it efficiently, deliberately, effectively, and I think she needs to be credited for that. Greg has become practically canonized by the press because of what he's been doing, and he's doing a great job. At first I thought, well, maybe this is a gender thing, but no, that's not it. I think what the advantage that Greg has that we don't have here is a functional city council. And I am so glad that we're here today to do something about that problem. That's my message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on matters not on the agenda? Oops. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, so here's Stephen Gamma. You know, I forgot to mention, can you state your name and your address?
Stephen Gama. Excuse me.
You have 3 minutes. Hold on. Go ahead.
I just feel kind of it's ironic that you have your backs to the public considering all the chaos in the city. So if you don't mind, I'll stand right here. Today's Halloween. It's a scary day for Port Hueneme. And the news the other day with the HUD situation, I think, is telling, very telling. And there's people that should be accountable for that problem, but it doesn't seem to be that accountability is an issue for the city. And there seems to be a lack of transparency in the city, and I know what transparency is, and I know what it's not. And I'm told that previous city council members would poll the council, and if they had a 3-2 vote, they would come out front and announce it as a 5-0 vote. That's not transparency. It never will be either. The Port lawsuit, when an entity claims you owe me $8 million, and then after 2 years you settle for $100,000, and then you try and tell us, the public, that this is a victory. We're not stupid. It's a losing proposition. I'm pretty sure that the attorney fees outweighed the $100,000 agreement. So my issue is be transparent on good and the bad. Be accountable for the good and the bad. You know, elected officials face accountability at the polls. Hueneme staff doesn't appear to have any accountability. You have a person with a title who's responsible for that redevelopment agency, and he's making well over $100,000. Is he going to be accountable for the problem, or we're just going to blame it on someone else?
You have a minute left, sir.
I saw a city employee getting arrested right in front of this hotel, obviously under the influence of drugs. Pretty sure he's no longer with the city. But my question is, what is the city doing to make sure that you have the tools in place to identify inappropriate behavior behind city vehicles? If you have one employee brazen enough to drive a vehicle in the middle of the day drunk or high or whatever he was, what are you doing to make sure that we're protecting the public at large and that these city employees are being held accountable for appropriate behavior in the workplace? So I just want to encourage the council to really take a hard look at itself. The most accurate form of recognition is the image reflected in a mirror. And to the veteran council members on this city council,
You have 10 seconds.
I would say consider your actions that may have resulted in problems for the city. Take a hard look at yourself
Your time's up,
and
sir.
come out and be transparent for all of us. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, yes, Councilmember Sharkey.
Just two statements, because I know people are concerned about the HUD issue. HUD themselves requested that we not make any public statements until the process was complete. I'm telling you the facts. And the three principals that were involved in the HUD issue no longer employed by the city. Those are two statements of fact. That's all I can say about it. As far as reporting 3-2 votes in closed session as 5-0 votes, I've been here 20 years. It's never happened.
Never.
Never. Not once.
Okay.
And also on the Oxnard Harbor District, that deal submitted 3 years additional on the back end. So that was a positive thing too. Okay, so we move on to item number 4.
Mayor, there's a couple
Is
more
there somebody
speakers.
else?
Couple more, yes.
Okay. Okay, so I have a speaker card from Cheryl Malone. So Cheryl, if you want to come up here, state your name and your address.
Cheryl Malone, 784 Island View Circle. I've been a resident Port Hueneme for over 30 years, and I probably have attended 3/4 of the city council meetings at that time, so I've seen a lot of people come and go. If I have any problem with something in the city, I contact the staff, and in most cases I get it taken care of. And if not, I go to my elected officials. And the problem is taken care of. I think that it has been very open through the years. I appreciate very much what Cynthia Haas has done. I agree with Beverly Kelly. She does not get the credit that the city manager of Oxnard does, and I think it has a lot to do with the press. We've heard that lately in debates. But I'd like to thank the people, the employees. You go around, you see them, hey, hi, you know, they recognize you, but all the city council, of course I don't go to closed session and that, but I've seen votes before that have not been 5-0, and so that's the way it is. It doesn't all have to be unanimous, but if you go to the city council meetings all the time, you will have seen in the past years different things, but I just appreciate what they all do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Breeze.
The comment regarding the city manager not getting credit for what she does, what she has done here. A little bit of history. A number of years ago, the council recognized that there was some problems in the city. And we started looking into things. It resulted in the then city manager leaving the city, and we brought Dick Belfont in and asked him to take a look at things. If anybody knows the city, Dick Belfont did. And he recognized some problems and took some action. And in the meantime, we searched for a city manager. We found Cynthia. She came on board and continued what Dick Belfont had started. He was only here for a few months.
And she began peeling back the onion, and she continued to find issues here at the city. And she took the appropriate action, very similar to what Greg Nyhoff is doing in Oxnard. So anyone that, these problems that, big problems that Hueneme has right now started a long time ago. They didn't start under Cynthia's watch, but she took the appropriate action to fix them. And as Councilmember Sharkey mentioned earlier, the major players that were involved in these significant issues that we have are no longer with the city. So I'd like to give kudos to Cynthia. A job well done. Sorry to see you go. And anyone that casts any dispersions on the job she has done better think twice, because she has really stepped up to the plate in a very tough time. Thank you.
Okay, and I have one more speaker card, Stephanie House.
Can I just make a comment?
Yes,
please?
yes.
It's a decorum issue for me as facilitator. I think for the public to have comments freely coming out, we ought to let them go the full time and let them talk, even if it's right up just a little over. But I think the council ought to refrain from discussion until we have a general synopsis at the end, so you can comment on those, just for decorum.
Sure.
Just so there's a fairness to everybody on that. I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Excuse me.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So, Stephanie, state your name and address.
Stephanie House, 432 Reed Way. I've been attending the council meetings pretty regularly for the last 6 months. And it's very clear watching. There's some deep resentments from the 2014 election. Here's a hint, it's over. The 2 new council members are treated like insurgents when they actually had higher vote counts than the 1 veteran council member received in the last election. It's time. The past ideas, past decisions have led us to a $1.4 million budget deficit for last year, $1.8 million budget deficit projected for next year, the $2.4 million letter from HUD. The old way of doing things hasn't worked, and it's not going to work. So treat new ideas with respect, open up and listen to those ideas, or there may be 2 more council members that are defeated come November. Thank you.
Excuse me. All right, so is there anyone else who wants to address the council on matters not on the agenda? All right, so then we go on to item number 4, City Council Team Building, and I'll turn that over now to Dr. Bill Mathis.
Thank you very much. Let me let me tell you what my understanding is about what my role is. That's probably a good idea. Council members are still invited. If you're uncomfortable with your back to the audience, we can make room on the side if you want to. So, Mayor, you too. So if you want to make a switch, please do, and Doug will give you some room over here if you want to switch. The role of the facilitator is just that. I don't take sides, and we want to facilitate a conversation. I started, before I went on vacation, with some ideas and met with all of the council members, either by phone or I met with them, and I met Tom on the telephone because we had a schedule screw up. It was our problem, not his. So we had numerous conversations since, and I'll try to cover many of the items. Decorum is really important. I want to cover the issue of transparency. This morning we'll have a 11:30 to 1 closed session about a personnel matter, and the personnel matter is selection of a permanent city attorney.
City manager.
City manager, excuse me. And then I want to have a little bit more open discussion on the process for selecting an interim. And I want that in open session, just so that I get it right. So it's more for me than and for the public. Because there are some misconceptions about what was agreed to and what wasn't. Our basic job this morning, as I see it, is to talk about the factions that have developed on the council and the various opinions that they have. I think it was well stated when somebody talked about some resentments from the past election, probably right, that things have changed. The image of the city is clearly at risk, if already not blown open. So it's a pretty festering kind of problem that this city faces. So we want to take on as many of them as possible. Appreciation of staff and holding staff accountable. If you remember the structure for how a city like ours runs, it's a matter of this 5 city council members. No one of them owns the direction. The city mayor is on a rotating basis, and she's selected by her peers from the 5, and she serves, in this case, 1 year at a time. There'll be perhaps a new one at the change of the guard December. Am I correct? So there'll be a changeover at that point, and so some of the things that have changed since I interviewed with all of you, there have been quite a few changes. In fact, it's been cataclysmic kind of changes, actually, with the HUD event and some of the accusations that are going on, and, if you will, the series of bad blood kind of experience, and the conflict has now risen to a pretty high level. So people have lots of very strong emotions about what's going on. When I came back, Cynthia had resigned and is going to go into retirement. City attorney feels under some kind of onslaught from some council members. Council members are somewhat divided, so we have a little bit of a mess to clean up today. Today is an opportunity to try to get some basic understandings so that they can go forward and make some good moves and make really good decisions. So there'll be some issues that we probably cannot handle in the public today. Usually in a session like this, because it is a special session, we can talk about what we want to talk about, but we can't make decisions. They have to come back to council for a decision. So it makes for a conversation to be really healthy. So this is a conversation today. Structure and roles. Just a reminder that the council has 2 employees. They have the city manager, in this case, until December 21st. Cynthia is the city manager and the chief executive officer of the city. She's the only one that can sign contracts. She has limits. The city attorney is the second employee, not in order, but it's he's not the chief operating officer, and he's delegated the responsibility of making sure the documents are legal, the contracts are legal, that he's also helpful in negotiation of very difficult situations, and he reminds council people when they cross the line, but he's not the hall monitor. He's not the babysitter for people's behavior, but he advises them, and he's not their attorney. He is the council and the city's attorney. Got that right so far? Okay. He works in a number of cities, very experienced, knows what he's doing. Cynthia has worked for some great cities and come here, knows what she's doing, experienced. Not, even though this is her first CM job, not a beginner in government. Janice, the blonde lady in the back, next to our city clerk, is a former deputy city manager in Pomona, and she's my boss. So just so we're clear. And we're married, and we work with city councils that have a lot of fun, like you're having. And I've worked with bankrupt cities, all of them, so I know what turmoil is about. I've worked in really good cities, And I enjoyed my interviews, by the way, with all of your council members, and I found the conversations to be very blunt, straightforward. I didn't feel like people held back. So I think we have a good report, a good beginning. This may not be the end of our story today, and then again it may. There are probably some structure problems and role problems that I want to talk about today, where in the frustration of not getting their points across, some council members have crossed some borderlines that I would say, quit that. I don't know that they're illegal, but it's not good behavior. And it's not my job today is to point out to them, hey, go back a few months and tell you where you were wrong. It's not my job. We want to talk about setting the course of making good decisions starting today, and I'm not looking backwards. And gender issues happen to be something that is going to be very important. But it's part of this bigger issue, which is you've got to respect each council member, the opinions of the other person, irrespective of male, female, black, white. So that's really important. And it's one of the bases of our democracy working. So I'm going to come back and remind you today of what I'm just going to call respectful behavior to each other, even though you have strong feelings. Is that fair? So I'll call you out, but I'll try to do it with some humor. I'm going to even put Jim over here and let him get his back from the wall because he's comfortable. But playful treating of people is different than disrespecting. And I feel like we can do that. There are lots of questions about transparency. Some of them are myths. Some of them are truthful. We'll talk about that, I think, as we go along, if that's something you want to talk about. The image of the city has taken a shot to the gut. And some of you can take a look at that and say, is the image of the city important, or is there something else more important? I happen to believe it's everything, particularly if you go in the bond market, you try to do financing, your reputation is everything you have, and you don't want to be a spectacle. It's just not the way you want to do business. Open process and responsible. There's a lot of misconception about what kind of business should be handled in the public and what kind of business needs to be respected and in private. Lots of accusations going on, and we'll try to separate those out going forward. I can't do anything about the past, and neither can you. So we're going to try to work on how we're going to do it from here on. Resentments from the election. I wasn't here before the election, but it seems like somebody said the problems have been here for some time, and you're probably right. But today they're more open wound, and we want to talk about how to suture some of them up, if we can, and define a course how we can begin handling some of the issues. And I have an agenda today where we will handle some of those, at least in a beginning way, if that's fair. Because the way team building ought to work is, I'm not going to ask any of them to sit here and hold hands. This is not a kumbaya session. This is, you know, I'm a management psychologist. I've been at this 40 years. And I found that holding hands is really good for my wife and I. But it's not necessary to make this thing work. So let's enjoy that. Budget deficits. Yeah, you don't know what a budget deficit is. After going through some of the horrendous activities and the wrenching politics of bankruptcy and what it does to people. Being in a hole financially in a household is awful. If you don't have enough money or you threaten people with jobs, that's awful. And we're facing a little bit, even though we have a reserve. So we ought to talk about how we're going to dig it out. Those are the problems this council needs to have at 5,000 feet. So let me talk about 5,000 feet. The council's job in most of our understanding is to today deal with what issues we're going to talk about, what the problems are, and formulate the policy, which is the what. That's what I'm going to ask them to do. When councils get in trouble, they begin to invade another area, which is the city management's position, and that's how to do it. So here is the council, and here is city management. That's the way the system works. And what happens when council members get frustrated is they start reaching in and want to build the chicken coop. Okay? And they get their fingers messed up because they shouldn't be building the chicken coop, euphemistically speaking, you know. So one of the things that happens is we get into a power struggle. And the power struggle is between the city manager, the city attorney, and some council members begin to try to point out the other's faults. Tom, you can't do this. You can't do this. Mayors can't do that. Well, those are accusations, and it comes from the frustration of not being heard well. And we want to be able to hear people really well. Complete sentences. So today, you'll hear me asking you to make sure that you hear what John's got to say completely. And by the way, if he pauses, like between sentences, he still gets to finish his sentence because he's a slow talker. I just made that up.
I hope so.
Yeah, but it's, people get to finish their thoughts, and they deserve to be able to talk and not get cut off. On the other hand, we want to guard against monopolizing. Some people sitting at this table are able to talk this long, and they control by talking this long. So I'll ask you to be succinct. And all of you are capable of talking that long. And I'm just going to ask you to be succinct. And so I'll be not very respectful by wanting you to be respectful of all of the team. So keep your comments succinct, think them through, write yourself a little note, please, so that everybody can get business-like things done. So those are some important things. Today we want to deal with what of the problem. If they want to give assignments, if the council wants to give assignments, the whole council must agree that that's an assignment. Tom can't give an assignment to the city attorney. It has to be 5. Jim has a hobby horse. He's been riding that hobby horse so hard that the old mule is dead. But he can't give an assignment to Cynthia. He can ask her a request. But the council has to agree that this is the way we do business. So I'm going to also ask you not to criticize somebody's different idea. It's just their different idea. So you get home free on that one. But at some point you have to take a consensus and you have to move forward. So the lack of consensus is one of the things this city is facing. We don't have consensus. One other problem we will want to deal with in terms of guidelines, and these are not Bill's guidelines, these are guidelines of high performance councils across the state, and you don't have to take any of them, but I'll make some suggestions. When there is a 3-2 vote or a 4-1 vote on an issue, there's got to be some guideline that says you don't have to deal with that issue the same way the next week, that it doesn't keep coming up, that it gets handled. But if there's new information that comes up, there's got to be a way of addressing bad decisions. So we've got to talk about that, as opposed to stomping on somebody else's feet. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we've got to have a mechanism for doing it, so that is fair to everybody. And many cities have faced these problems and have overcome them. So I think we can begin to deal with that. Enough of that discussion. Just One more thing about conflict. It's evident from these conversations that many people fall on one side or the other about what's going wrong here. And this is a laundry list. We can probably solve those before noon, right? So conflict is very, very interesting. That's why I love being in the public sector. And conflict has essentially three outcomes that we're taking a look today. One is you can use the clash of ideas in a constructive way. Someone has said that constructive simply means, I didn't think of that before. Tom makes a comment to Cynthia, and she says, I didn't think of that either. But Cynthia's already decided to do something, and yet Tom has a really good idea. And suddenly the input of two very different clashes puts together a constructive opportunity for solutions. And we can do it constructively. The other one, the other outcome is that we can take on, if you want to, is something called becoming very passive. Some people call it passive-aggressive behavior. That means they smile as if they're agreeing to it, and they really mean, hell no. That's passive-aggressive. That means, I'm not going to tell you what I think. Or, worse yet, they go outside in the hallway and say, I voted for it, and then they go out and say, I didn't really. So that's called Chicken Little. So some of that happens in this council. Some of that happens. Talking outside the door. If you choose to engage in that, it comes into the last part of this conflict. That's called destructive. We have probably decayed in our discipline with each other in running the ship to some destructive behaviors in the past. Now it's time to get on the train, going forward and cleaning it up. Can't do anything about the past. Can't do anything about the hurt feelings. We can talk about them. We can talk about them and we'll air it out this morning. Then we're moving on. We have to come out of here with some goals or I will not have been successful. And you're going to be disappointed. And Cynthia's going to say, Bill, I thought you could do better than this. So all of you want something positive to come out of this. I don't want it to be more destructive. I don't want it to be passive. Something positive should come from it. So that's the purpose of our discussion. I'd like to go around and ask council members, since this is kind of an airing it out time, and I'm going to put some words in your mouth, if you don't mind. It's called reframing. So if Sylvia says, I think Jim is a da-da-da-da-da-da, I say, fine, Cynthia, or Sylvia, or whoever makes the comment, I'm going to reframe it in something that can work, as opposed to the name calling. And just remind you it's name calling, but it's not a solution. Is that fair? If I can reframe it, so I can help you get it right. Because I want it to be successful. I want you to be successful in getting your point across. That's fair. If I don't get it right, correct me. Good boy. I'll handle it. I know that Sylvia has corrected me several times already. And I said, she's probably right. She's a mom. So I get it. Council, any questions? Now we want to go around. What I'd like to ask you, and I'll do my list here for you. This is staff list. I want to come back to this because they ask all really good questions. Appreciation of staff and accountability does not work if you're in a passive or destructive mode with staff. Does not work. I would be surprised if part of Cynthia's decision to leave isn't based on conflict unresolved. I'd be surprised. In hiring a new interim, they can come in and they can be fearless because you can't fire them. I've only seen 3 interims fired in my 40 years, only 3. And the 3 started trying to do behaviors and fix things when they weren't asked to fix them. So they didn't pay attention to the council. One of the things that I would appreciate today is I'd like to know what are the 3 or 4 things are. If you please make some notes, council. I'd like to know the 3 or 4 goals you want of the interim when this interim comes in, if that's what you choose. And it seems like that's what you've decided, but I'm unclear. I want to know what the goals are for hiring one. If you don't have any goals, you don't know what you want this person to do, then how do you know who to hire? So you've got to have some goals that are doable. So we want to talk about that in this session. Okay, that can make sense. And then I want to clarify what your understanding is, and I'll ask the mayor to kick that one off in a little while, what the process is she understands, and Cynthia, what's the process, so everybody hears the same thing. Again, clarification is a good thing. Gender issues, I think I've already covered that one. I can't help some of the old feelings about who should be here, who can't be. I respect everybody's idea. HUD accountability, what can I say? It's unfortunate, but it's a reality, and we can talk about the course going forward, but we're also saying what's the state of negotiations. I'll talk out loud with Mark, who's your attorney, and see if we can't get to the bottom of what's next without getting into the issue. But again, it's what is the issue that we're going to now face, and what are the ramifications without getting into the issue and solving it here? Because we probably can't solve it. Am I right on that? We can't solve it in here? No. Should I try? No. Okay, thank you. Okay. I want to end up on a constructive vein today. I don't want people to go out in the hallways and not say what they don't have in mind. I want to encourage you to say what's on your mind, and I'll just help you reframe it, just get it out. And we probably don't want to increase the dirt pile called destructive comments. We probably want to be as positive as possible. Can I start with you?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, and if you want to come back around, that's fair too. You don't have to do all at once. What do you want to accomplish?
A good question. Thank you, Mr. Mathis. One of the primary concerns, a couple of concerns. One is being open and transparent. That is one of my primary, in my campaign. Transparency was one of the primaries. We're not, in my viewpoint, we're not being transparent. Number 2, within that process of being transparent, I feel there are times in closed session we discuss things that shouldn't be in closed session. It's a violation of the Brown Act. And extending that further, we're directed, and I feel intimidated, controlled, to a point of being complicit with some of those issues to keep the rest of the council, the city manager, and the city attorney pleased.
Okay. So you feel like they're unfairly controlling your conversation?
No, well, in a degree. I'm feeling that there are laws, the Brown Act, and maybe 1234, and we should follow them. And I feel complicit if I have to go along with things that, according to those laws, we're not applying.
So you feel like you're unfairly being muted to the public process?
I won't say unfair. Well, yeah, unfair, but I'm saying that, yes, I'm being muted.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you feel unfairly treated that way? Picked on?
No, I'm a big boy,
Okay. But it's wrong?
but it's wrong.
Okay. So part of this closed session discussion that you'd like to see is a clarification, airing out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I got that one. That's a tough one, but I think we can probably work on it. You come back to you if you have another one.
Okay.
Doug? Today, what would you like to get out of this?
I was pretty excited when the two new council members were elected. Apprehensive, but a little bit excited, especially regarding Tom. He has a lot of history with the city, and a lot of experience. And I've worked hard to try to foster a good relationship and a good working relationship. But frankly, I feel regarding both of the new council members that they have an agenda, and their agenda includes throwing stones, casting dispersions, finding fault, with very little effort of attempting to work together. I could attribute it to lack of experience on their part with city government, not knowing how city government works and what their role is and how to work together as a team. But I can't say that about Tom. He's been around too long. So I have real issues with the two new council members. It seems like they feel that their job is to shoot holes in the boat and sink us. And I don't know why. I can't figure that out. I can't, for example, Jim, I have this feeling that he's huddling with other local agencies to try and come up with ways to cast dispersions on the city. His comments constantly from the dais includes comments such as speaking about staff and getting something done, constantly includes phrases such as fraud, inappropriateness, concealing information constantly. And it's very detrimental to morale and the productivity of staff. Mm-hmm. And I've even had Jim over to my house and we talked about this. And I can't understand why he continues to cast dispersions instead of trying to work together towards a common goal. Similarly with Tom, he puts things on the agenda and brings issues out from the dais when there was a good opportunity to work together to find a solution that we could bring to the public as a solution instead of coming to the dais and throwing stones. I have real difficulty with that, and I think that there's quite a bit of deterioration of morale at the city, attributable to the behavior of these two new council members. And my hope that we could work together and find solutions and move forward, frankly, at this point, is gone. I don't know where to go from here. So those are my issues.
Well, I appreciate, there's a whole lot of issues inside there. Can I sort of repeat?
Sure.
In different terms? That the minority agenda of the two gentlemen you're talking about, two council members with a new face and a new attitude about what's wrong, what's not. It seems like what you're saying is they come in with a whistleblower attitude. How can I tell the bad story? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. That it's having, in your opinion, detrimental effect on morale, staff.
Big time.
And the negativity, you'd like to know why the negativity is an approach.
Yes.
That you see them as throwing flames, not trying to resolve problems in a more traditional way, like talking to people. Okay. Did I miss anything?
No,
That's good enough to start?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll go to the mayor. I've got to move around a little bit now. Today, that's a pretty good list.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can cover one.
It's a start,
Yeah.
because I think we can fill up a couple of sheets. The reason for all of this team building was because of what I witnessed in one of our closed sessions. And from that point, I just realized that we couldn't proceed forward, and to do nothing was not an option, that I really had to bring this group together in a team building fashion. But it was really because I felt that there was quite a bit that was undermining the city, but most importantly the work of the city council. And so what I saw at a city council meeting closed session was one of the members pretty much going after the other member, to the point of our city attorney, who was there, was Carl Berger, and he had to actually step in, that there was almost a fight. And there were some fighting words that were said, and at that point I clearly realized that this had gone over just speaking at a table and trying to find some commonalities and seeing if we could resolve some issues in closed session, and witnessed something that could have really gotten into a whole lot worse. And I was very, very concerned for my city council member. I was very concerned for the staff. I was concerned for myself. But what it brought, what it showed me is that that action and that tactic of bullying and that tactic of undermining and dividing and conquering was something that was going on within other departments and other within the city by one particular council member. And I've had enough, and we need to move forward, and we need to move forward constructively. But when I saw Councilmember Figg challenge Councilmember John Sharkey, I had enough.
Okay.
And it was to the point of almost being violent.
You were fearful.
Yes, and so I was fearful for not only us as council members, but then how is this happening within City Hall? And so I feel that there were even some antagonistic kind of approaches and behaviors towards me, towards other council members, towards our city manager and city attorney as well, that really concerned me about the behavior.
So antagonism towards staff.
And I know you're going to ask each of us the question, and I don't
Right.
know if this is an opportunity for Cynthia to
I'll come back
say
to her.
anything.
I'll come
Okay.
back to her, sure.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Me? Okay. Well, the original question was, what would we like from an interim or a permanent city manager if we should get one? And
Well, wait a minute. That's on the agenda today.
Oh, I thought that was-
No.
Yeah, yeah.
The question, let me help you with the question. What do you want from today's session?
Right, oh,
What do
okay,
you wanna make
I
sure
thought it was
we
what you wanted from the city manager, but that leads right into it.
Okay, all right.
And, you know, one of the issues that we're going to be facing is that, like a lot of other cities, we have a cohort that's going to retire. There are a lot of people facing retirement.
Succession planning.
Succession planning, and I know when Cynthia leaves, I'm willing to bet there's a whole lot of key people leave with her. And some of that has to do with the work environment here. And as we go generally, we're into a general topic of discussion here. I think there's some serious questions that need to be discussed or disclosed.
Work environment, you mean hostile?
Hostile work environment.
All right.
You know, and I would ask, have any members of this body ever violated state disclosure laws? Have any members of this body ever threatened the employment of any employees? Have any members of this body ever leaked closed session information to interested third parties? Have any members of this body ever given out employees' personal contact information to outside third parties without permission? Have any members of this body ever been advised that their behavior could lead to the claim of a hostile work environment? Have any members of this body ever attempted to physically intimidate a female constituent at a public meeting? Have any members of this body ever been cited as a cause of workplace stress by a female employee? Have any members of this body, when speaking with a female employee, ever used words to the effect of, "I know how to get a hold of you, I saw your number on the restroom wall"? Have any members of this body, when speaking with an female employee, ever said words to the effect, "Now I know why women should not be in positions of authority"? Have any female...
I want to stop right here, because we're crossing into an area of potential litigation.
This is a question time.
What I'm telling you
I can answer
is
these
that...
Excuse me, I'm running.
I'm leaving right now, and I'm going to the DA, and I'm going to the Ethics Committee for the city attorney, and whoever else I can conjure up, the grand jury, whatever. And we will have more discussion, I can assure you.
You're heading for the door, but no one gets out alive.
Come on, John, let's go. It was you that threatened to take me outside.
The final question is, have any female employees ever expressed concerns over their personal safety due to the behaviors of any members of this body?
I got the questions. Those are pretty clear. Well, I guess I don't get to ask Tom questions. Okay. That's a pretty good list. Can I ask, Council, would it be okay if I asked Mark and Cynthia some questions about this too?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know they're not council members, they're your employees, but
They should be, but I'm about ready to leave too.
do you want me not to ask a
I
question?
don't care. I'm serious.
Okay. Which of these issues would you prioritize, Cynthia, in terms of hoping that they would cover today? All of them?
Yes, I don't, but seriously, we'll get to all of them, but yeah, I think they all represent issues that have been a problem.
You experienced this one as city manager?
Not myself, but I believe others have.
Okay. Do you feel threatened?
In some ways, yes.
Do we have a hostile work environment?
I think that
In your opinion?
I guess I'm thinking within the organization or in...
Are you concerned that we're developing a hostile climate for staff?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Maybe it's the way I asked the question. Succession planning, are we about to lose staff we shouldn't lose?
There are people looking.
Okay. And why are they looking, do you think?
I think...
Opinion again. It's
My opinion
It's
is,
opinion.
I think people are looking because they read very negative things in the paper about the city. More than 100 people depend on the city for their livelihood. I think it's embarrassing to them. some of the things that they read, and it's even more embarrassing when many of those comments come from city council members.
Okay. The question of transparency comes up here, and to me, as somebody who facilitates a lot, that really concerns me about the transparency. Can I leave you for a second and go to Jim, because I'd like some additional clarification of what you're talking about in transparency, because I promised you, as I did others, that transparency was a very important topic, and not accusations, but concerns.
Right.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Transparency, what doesn't somebody get?
Depends on how it's interpreted.
Okay.
From what I'm interpreting from the Brown Act,
Uh-huh.
I'm interpreting for 1234, AB 1234.
Mm-hmm.
And having held lack of experience, but been another similar type of council channel, the service district and several other boards.
Right.
This is one of the biggest conflicts I've ever been on.
Okay.
It's very uncomfortable.
Right.
Now, Mr. Sharkey claims that we've never had this will of the council situation, but in all honesty, I was told upon being sworn in by the mayor,
Right.
and the city manager was there, that the way we do things here is we decide beforehand before we go out to the dais. If you're a 3-2 vote or 4-1 vote, you go with the will of the council. And that's been repeated to me numerous times. So it's untrue to say that doesn't happen or hasn't happened.
But you and I both know that that's illegal.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Mhm.
If not illegal, unconscionable.
Yes, sir.
So is that a concern that you've been told that behavior is acceptable here?
It was intimated, yes, sir.
Intimated, okay. Okay.
In fact, this is the way we do it here, was the statement.
Okay. So that implies that there are some improprieties going on.
Yes, sir.
And so let my little red flag run up to my head. Tell me what to do with that one, Mr. Attorney, because that's an accusation I don't think I can deal with. The accusation that you're trying to be coerced, is that fair? Okay.
Intimidated.
That you're being told by some of their council or by
And by the city attorney.
and the city attorney, okay,
Right.
that they're doing that. To me, that's, I'm sort of crossing into a fine line, and I'm not asking you to defend yourself on that question. I'm looking at, what do I do with that? Because that's such a clear violation that it doesn't even bear responding, but it's almost like a criminal investigation. And I don't do investigations.
No.
So have you thought of filing with the district attorney?
I've considered it, but I haven't.
That's pretty serious, though.
Yes, sir. Very serious.
And that would, and the attorney, since I worked for a lot of attorneys, they would say, where's your proof?
Mm-hmm.
And they would not only say, where's the proof, but you would be under some pressure to be very specific, and if you weren't, then you could get whipped
Right.
for defamation of character. Okay. So just so I'm clear about that. Yeah,
That's why I'm
just-
very uncomfortable in this meeting, because
Okay.
I feel without another witness here from where I'm coming from.
Yeah, you got a whole house of them.
Well,
But I just don't want to put
Yeah.
you unfairly under pressure.
He met a witness that was there at the time that he was told that,
Okay. Okay.
which I'm not one, and I've never heard of this before.
Have you ever heard of this before?
No, but it wasn't, I didn't swear him in, the city clerk swore
I'm
him
sorry,
in.
but the city, the mayor is the one that's told me repeatedly.
I've never said that.
Thank you very much.
I've never heard.
You've never heard that
Never heard
either?
that either.
Okay, good. Have you done that?
Well, actually, I think Mr. Hensley is referring to one of my first meetings with he and Councilmember Figg. And this came up at the council team building workshop in January with Jan Perkins. I believe the comment, no, I don't believe, I know the comment that I made to Mr. Fig and Mr. Hensley was that one of the roles that staff plays is to try to answer questions. Because from staff standpoint, an ideal situation is having all the council in agreement on something, or most of the council in agreement on something, because that gives city staff very clear direction.
Right.
And so I believe Mr. Hensley misinterpreted that statement for me, because his next comment was that he wasn't going to be part of the, and I said, you guys, a city council should function as a team. He made the comment that he had no interest in being part of the team, that he was a community advocate, and that he would not vote with the group. And I believe I'm almost paraphrasing you perfectly in that remark. That was the conversation. It had nothing at all to do with how you vote, but rather how it made staff's ability to implement so much more easy when it was very clear what the direction, and that staff was here to help them understand any issues and work through issues if there were things they needed to come to me and they had questions about or whatnot. So that was my first meeting with the two of them, and it was really more of a sort of a way for me to offer, come and talk to me when you have questions about things. Because really what we would love as a staff is for everybody to be on the same page. And that was my comment.
Jim, could there have been some misunderstandings?
No, sir. It was very explicit, and
Okay.
that's incorrect to what she stated.
Actually,
Okay.
Mr. Hensley,
Okay, but
that's not correct.
But that's his opinion.
Fine.
That's his
Good.
opinion.
And by the way, you get to stay with it.
Pardon?
And you get to stay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
we're not going to
I'm
argue.
feeling very compromised by this.
Okay.
I want to bring this out if I may. It seems like this has been kind of a setup unbeknownst to you. Here is a thread of emails by Councilman Sharkey kind of attacking this whole process.
Excuse me, I'd like for you to hang on to those, please.
Okay.
And
Well, I don't plan to stay around much longer because I feel uncompromised legally, possibly here.
you do?
I do.
Can
I
you
really do.
explain that one? Because I'd love to have you stay.
Well, I showed you a document
Right.
that I received last night. I feel it's very threatening and very intimidating.
Okay.
And I don't feel it's...
I just wanted you to have an opportunity for people out here to understand what your thinking is,
Okay.
because that's fair to you.
I can't mention it. It was by the attorney saying that it's confidential. Can I say?
Okay. So he's asking you something. Okay. Do you think that the city attorney has given you some bad advice regarding this issue of transparency?
That's in my opinion, sir. In my opinion, I couch my terms.
I got you, and that's what I was asking, your opinion. Yeah, I'm not asking about whether it's true or not, it's just opinion.
In my opinion.
Okay. That it's the unholy alliance.
I wouldn't say that, sir. No, that's not my words.
Okay, it was mine.
Yeah. I wanted to paraphrase that
Sure.
correctly.
Okay. What would cause you today, is there anything I could do that would cause you to feel more comfortable so you could stay to deal with some of these important issues such as, now, I want you to listen to my whole question. There are a lot of big issues the city faces.
Right.
That I would feel your value would be helpful in terms of clarifying about the interim, clarifying about the city, the hiring of the city manager, and transparency, because you value that, and so do I. And I want to make sure that your input is here when we go through that discussion. So I guess part of it is there anything I could do as a facilitator to help you feel comfortable enough to stay through those discussions?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate, and I sense that you are asking for my participation, but under the circumstances, in my opinion, I feel that I could be totally compromised by false and fabricated information, and I do not wish to face a lawsuit.
Okay. All right.
And I feel that this is like a 5-to-1 now, and I do not feel very comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I feel that I could be, if I went on, I feel,
Yeah.
I feel that I would be jeopardizing myself.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So I thank you for your participation. I know what you're doing. I really appreciate.
Maybe you again.
I thank everybody else for coming.
Okay.
But it just, I'm not going to put myself into another position of being compromised or being complicit to something.
So Jim, I'm just going to take a break and not make it uncomfortable for you to leave.
Right, thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Let's take.
I would like to say something before you take a break, though.
Okay, sure.
I really think, Councilmember Hensley, I would implore you to go see the district attorney's office, and I want to do that publicly.
I will.
That you should go do that. You should take all of your allegations to the district attorney and go over all of them.
Okay, sir.
Because I think that you've made some really strong allegations, and if you feel that way, you should really.
In my opinion, sir.
I understand. I just think you
Thank
should go to
you.
the district.
See, I'm being worked into
allegations.
something that I don't want to get involved in.
What about Sharkey's allegations? He just sat here and didn't answer the question, which was, what do you expect out of this day?
Excuse
And he
me,
attacked
excuse me,
that guy.
excuse me.
I got it.
Okay,
I got
thank
it.
you.
I got it. We're going to take a break right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. That council cannot interfere with the city manager or the city attorney's work. You can advise, but you can't go into the workplace and advocate with staff, advocate overthrowing the government. You can't go into the departments per se, looking and trying to find a mole, or find and use a mole, or find people in there to put in a staff, putting them in uncomfortable situations. That's not the way business is done. And when you do, you create conflict within staff to rebel against not only their chief, in this case, the city manager, or even the city attorney, is that you dispel by unseemly means this behavior. So I know that behavior has gone on by some council because they've told me. So I think that it's, and the response has been, you shouldn't be doing that. But it's their choice to go on and continue doing that. And I would just advise this threesome that's left, it's really important to be friendly with staff and so forth. But what's also important is you can't tell people what to do. Nor can you go in and try to kind of schmaltz up the group and cause them to be a problem. I've been in many police departments where people have tried to go in to the department and talk with a sergeant or talk to somebody about police issues. Or particularly it's famous when police or fire, when you go in and we have negotiations, is some council members may develop their own snitches. And it's very important to realize that that's unseemly behavior, it's unethical behavior on the part of those council members who would choose to do that, because it's coming out of closed session, and some of that behavior just can't go on, and you function well. So that is an admonition. I think that it's clear from working with years and years that when that engages in more than just a little slip now and then, it becomes a very big issue. Talk about where we are, Cynthia, now. Talk about where we are in terms of what you're going to have to do between now and when you leave to sort of clean up some of the messes. What do you see as partly what you need to do? Because there are some messes.
Clearly, Mark and I need to work through some of the issues with HUD. And hopefully, and get, at least until I leave, I will try to get it with Mark as close as possible. It's unlikely that will be resolved before I will leave. But there are other issues too, and a lot of those are morale issues, as Councilmember Breeze brought up. Issues with the press. They've been given a lot of information, much of it erroneous. But at the end of the day, I think many employees, again, are somewhat embarrassed by some of the things put in the press, and many of those things we can't comment on because they're related to employee privacy issues. And so Mark and myself, I can't respond to a lot of erroneous information. I can't respond to it at all.
How does that work when you have other people who can freely do talking and you're the one in charge of everything and you don't get to talk? I mean, that doesn't sound fair.
Yeah,
That's the process. I mean, as far as, it's not just government on when it comes to employees. Same's true of the private sector, is that employees have privacy rights. We cannot talk about what's happened to them in the workplace, whether they get terminated or quit. We just simply can say they no longer work here. We cannot say anything about it. On the other hand, they can go out publicly and say almost anything they want about what happened, and we can't really respond.
But it seems unfair in that you may have had some, in most cases, very legitimate reasons for making things happen, and yet you're hand-tied to those people that are telling falsehoods and stories.
that's true.
And how does the rest of the staff not get demoralized by what looks like the ineffectiveness of administration for explaining what's happened?
I assume that's a rhetorical question. Yeah, of course, that is demoralizing. If your place that you work is being criticized unfairly or even fairly, that does have an effect on people. People want to work for organizations that are respected.
What is the blow to the city in terms of image, Sylvia? What do you think? As mayor, you're still going to be a council member when some of this blows over. What is the repair work that you see is necessary?
It's very unfortunate that information has gotten out even before we've been able to discuss it as a council, and some of it is irreparable. Some has gone so deep within the organization that there could be not only heads of the departments leaving, but really good people as well. Many of them are coming up possibly on retirement, and so it could be, an opportunity, a door out. But it's going to be a really deep and long rebuilding for the city, for morale, for staff, departments. Hopefully there won't be a hiccup with services for our community. But it's, and then we all serve on commissions and committees and boards out of this group representing the city. And we all then face our colleagues in other cities, and, they ask us what's going on, and are you okay, and is everything okay, and can we help? And, so there's a lot of people that might be there to, to encourage us and help us out. But some of what has gone on has been demeaning and demoralizing, and it's affected our staff, which is unfortunate. And so it's going to take a long process to come out. And like, city attorney and city manager have said that there are some things that we cannot say. We can't just jump on the chance of if, information and an op-ed piece has been written, we can't say much in there because of some of those employee privileges and all. And so it's going to be a long process. But I believe we need to, from here on out, we need to move forward. We need to have this opportunity to share the rest of what we've been thinking and feeling and experiencing in the environment, but we really need to move forward. We need to move forward as the body of the council for the city.
John, it seems to me that, and this is kind of a question, but it needs to be answered, is how does a council of 3 people move forward when it's clear that 2 don't want to play in this game?
That's the really tough issue, because of course you have a majority in place, and I've been noticing that some of the Washington attitude has been drifting down to the local level a little bit. It's you know, we're not colleagues, we're opponents, and you know, we'd rather sink the ship than cooperate. You know, with the majority, we can pass whatever resolutions we need to pass, but at the same time, when we talk about image and press, you know, we've got a hostile press right now, and they're all government is bad, all government is screwed up. Look what's happening at Port Hueneme. But then I look at, you know, Oxnard again, who's got far worse problems than we do, but they're a far bigger city, of course, and yet they're getting, despite all the revelations, they're still getting credit for moving forward. And I know all the guys on the Oxnard City Council, and believe me, they don't all agree on everything.
Right.
They're a very diverse bunch, but when it comes to trying to solve the city problems, they're willing to work together and get it done. And you don't have people leaking information out to the press and trying to generate stories that make the rest of us look bad or make the city look bad. You know, and people have to speak to their own motivations, but it's a difficult process. And as we look at hiring a new city manager, I have to wonder who the hell wants to work here. You know, with this kind of atmosphere that's going on.
Well, the short answer is you have to have an ironclad contract. You have to pay them a lot.
Yeah, I think Oxnard was lucky to get Greg Nyhoff, and he kind of came out of nowhere.
Right.
And he stood up very well, and it's going to take. We're going to need someone that is ready to rebuild an entire organization in the face of some strong headwinds.
So how do you see, Doug, how do you see limping ahead? And I don't mean the three of you are limpers, but you know, how do you see moving ahead when you have the antagonism seemingly of two other people on committees, on assignments, while you're trying to move in one direction, they're moving in a different one?
Well, as much as I've tried to work with Jim and Tom, today, their behavior today has demonstrated to me that they don't have any intention of working together. They state they're not part of the group, they're an activist. And especially with Tom being a longtime city resident and a former city employee, I just can't understand that mentality. It just befuddles me. But we have to move on from here. Their statement and their behavior shows me that they have no intention of trying to work together or do what's in the best interest of the city as a group. They're interested in chaos and destruction and accusations, whatever else. So we have to go on from here. Frankly, I'm not comfortable having them on committees that represent the city if that's their behavior. I'm not comfortable with that at all. I worked hard to make sure that they got as much committee experience as possible when they first got elected. I worked hard to put Jim Hensley on as chairman of the Water Agency Board. And Tom's on it also. But they've, for example, one vote they did caused the city to miss out on the opportunity for a $750,000 grant. I just don't understand why they would do something like that. So I'm not in favor of them being on any of the committees until they show they're willing to be part of the team. I'm not saying they have to agree with us, they can vote how they want, but they're not even interested in being part of the team. So, and we have to be a team to move the city forward. We have to respect each other, try and find consensus to move forward to what's in the best interest of the city. That's what we were elected to do. I don't think anybody expected their representative to continually cast dispersion and destroy the city itself. I just can't believe anybody would vote somebody on the council with the intent of doing that.
Do you want to respond to that?
You know, I hear my colleagues out, both Doug and John, and we have a really serious issue right now. I know that that Doug had, had befriended Jim and tried to, even after one of our first council meetings where we were taking a look at the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA, and I think it was Pacific Camps or something for our recreation opportunities and youth programming services. And so I won't go into some of the detail, but I know that Jim Hensley called our staff used car salesmen and called them out as they're presenting just the information from a community consensus group that said, of all the RFPs, we vetted everybody out and we feel...
They did the work the council asked them to do.
Yeah.
And he belittled them from the dais.
And so I know that Doug reached out to Jim afterwards and said, the staff deserves an apology for what you did. And so I know that, Doug has tried earnestly to work alongside them, and we have as well, to include them, for everything that we have. And, at one point even Tom Figg walked out of a city council meeting after I called him on an issue that was absolutely incorrect. And he got really upset and he walked out. That wasn't the first time he walked out on me. He walked out on me then before he ever got seated, but was a council member elect. And I met with him and he didn't necessarily like what I had to say. I told him that he's no longer a staff person nor a candidate. He is a council member now. And I really expect him to act like a council member. And he really got upset at me and walked out. So I know that, the behavior that we saw today is not really anything new for us, maybe new for the audience here, but certainly it is where that kind of behavior in the general public and with the other colleagues that we serve on these other boards, I happen to really be in unison with Mayor Pro Tem Breeze about what he's saying.
Let me cover something that's really important here. One of the things that both council members had materials written that they wanted to distribute, and in fact tried to distribute them, and in fact probably did. When council members began doing staff work and have epistles put together, one of the ways of undermining the rest of their colleagues is by bringing material that you haven't had a chance to read. It's an undermining behavior. One of the things, whoever's the chair, in this case it's Sylvia, and if it turns out you're next in line, or whatever the arrangement is, I do strongly recommend you not continually accept that kind of material. And I said, I don't want the material. I don't want to see it, because what I'm doing is reinforcing the fact that they're bringing, and the behaviors happened before.
It was an email though from Mr. Shaw.
Excuse me, can you?
Well, I'm just going to finish because
okay.
He's not invited, but
right.
By the way, I will give you an opportunity before we quit the end of the day, and again before noon, for anybody who wants to say noon. I can't close you out. On the other hand, this is a council discussion. There got to be some council guidelines, Councilor, in terms of these last-minute epistles that are, in fact, replacing staff. And if it says it's confidential, and then it's confidential. But it's like, where do we stand on that? This last-minute handing out things.
I don't believe there's anything specifically in the council norms on that particular item, although I don't think that that's covered.
I read it, and I read your norms, and I don't think that's covered.
Right, I mean,
But it's-
norms, when they're written, they tend to cover things that are happening at the time, so perhaps when those were written, that wasn't a problem, or wasn't one of the issues. It could be addressed as, the norms can be revised at any time, that could be addressed.
Mhm. But I think the point coming back is I generally find a continuation of last-minute documents. It's like notes written to your colleagues, passing them out, is pretty unfair for everybody, particularly if it's statistics or it's legal. Many complaints from council are, "Counselor, give us the material ahead of time so we can read and study it, because I don't like making a decision based on something I've just heard for the first time. I want to think about it." And that seems like a fair process. And if we don't have it in our norms right now, Janice, I think we want to catch that. Because entering the norms, we're looking at how to get better and how to improve things for the next time around. And yet, the insights of council members, we want them. But I understand that they've even cut off communication with administration. So they're not even talking to you, so they're bringing in documents.
Although they do go around me.
But the behavior going into staff and beginning is clearly fomenting rebellion. And isn't that, Tom, interfering with the ability of the city manager to manage?
This is Mark.
Mark, I mean.
Yes, and that is part of the norms and in the city.
I read those.
And the municipal code too, is that all the direction to staff is to go, or come from the city manager, and if council wants something from staff, they're supposed to take that to the city manager first. They're not supposed to go directly to staff and give direction.
Is that how it's working?
No. Well, it is with the majority, with 3 council members. It is not working that way with Councilmember Figg or Councilmember Hensley.
Well, historically, we've always had a very open kind of process here. I know some cities, the city manager demands everything goes through the city manager. Our city council has always had access to staff.
Right.
And it's never been a problem before. For this meeting, I asked the city manager and city attorney to try and compile some notion of how much staff time has been spent from requests from each individual council member.
Right.
And what we've seen is a radical discrepancy on behalf of one particular council member compared to everybody else. And there have been, over these past few months, thousands of dollars of staff time spent trying to comply with the requests of just one council member. And we've never had a policy to deal with council requests for information or research on staff, or like to know something about this. It's never been a problem before, but it's it gets to the point of being abusive, and I don't know, I'm sure Mark has kept track of his hours, but to spend an hour screaming on the phone at your employees is just not productive, to put it mildly.
But it seems to me like that ought to be in the norm somewhere. So let's talk about that for just a second, because that's a constructive, to me, it's a constructive change. Is many cities will set up, and it's like the city manager, it's expected that if you ask for something that's going to take an hour or two, that the city manager and staff, including the attorneys, will accommodate you. So I'm just wondering what's the expectation or the policy we have currently, and when is it overdone? Because then if it's going to take a lot of staff time, that requires a majority of you to okay and authorize, yes, it's okay to do that. And so that seems to be the norm for most councils. What's your expectation of how much time could a council member demand without going back to everyone? How much time would you think that Tom or Cynthia would do on your own individual request?
So I may think that it could be in an hour to maybe 5 hours, and I'd have to defer then to Cynthia and say, what would be reasonable as an opportunity to get back to somebody's inquiry or a little bit of research that is needed. But clearly I believe that particularly Councilmember Figg has really been out of control on this. And to the point of once where just recently he asked something of both Cynthia and our city attorney that their pushback was, for that, Tom, you're going to have to bring it back to council for all of us to decide whether or not that would be a good use of our time, because clearly it would be past the 5 or 10 or even 20 perhaps hours to come up with this information. It was a threatening response. I don't know if these two want to comment on it, but it was really out of this world.
What do you mean a threatening response?
Well, Councilmember Figg pointed out that he's counting down the days for the next election.
Inferring
that, he's out to get these two, and he's out to get a few of the rest of us. If they didn't do his work, if they didn't do what he's asked them to.
Yeah, and that was a request for something like 35 or 40 years worth of records.
Yeah, it was a very unreasonable request.
Did you turn him down?
Well, it never came to council.
I did. I told him that I felt that it was so extensive that it really needed to go back to the council. Some of the records he was asking for I didn't even know if existed, but by and large it was such a lengthy request that it would take weeks and weeks of staff work to assemble what he was asking for.
And we're in the middle of trying to come up with the rest of our budget and to pass that and everything else that's going on, and in addition to the HUD letter and all of that, and the span is demanding that there would be a response, and that staff time would be allocated to this on top of everything else.
So what is a reasonable norm? Mark was talking about, we usually develop norms based on some current need from council, and you have some limits, obviously, because of hourly rates. What do you see in some of the cities you work with in terms of time limits?
Hour to 2, generally.
That's what I'm used to experience. I write probably council norms probably 10 times a year, rewrite them and do it because of meetings like this based on their needs. But I think that certainly is a good guideline. John?
Well, it's not something we've ever had to think about before. So it's a little hard to judge, and probably half an hour is too low, 5 hours maybe too much. We can look at other cities that have these kinds of norms and probably go with that because they probably have the experience with it. And an hour or two seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Doug?
Yeah, I agree. I would say 2-3 hours.
Maybe we'll come back with a follow-up on that as one of the norms, and Janice will capture that for. By the way, for people in the audience, when these notes get through, they're available to everybody. The notes that are on here, and then we've got those, and Janice has the notes, and we'll send them to the manager through the clerk, and they'll have those for anybody that wants them. Just so you know, if anybody wants them. Yeah, good. What other open sores are there, John, that we need to clean up?
Well, I think we've covered most of it.
How do we fix this? If there is a hostile environment going on in City Hall, how do we begin to address it?
Well, in the private sector, there'd be a remedy, but there isn't here. If we have members that are intimidating staff, creating a hostile environment for our employees, then somehow we need to limit their contact, I think. And I don't know what the legal limits are of actions we could take. But what's going on now can't go on. It can't go on in any organization. You can't have employees treated like that. So it's a little, you know, I'm not sure what concrete steps this council can take. We can certainly, you know, as Doug said, take some administrative actions. But as far as controlling what happens with interactions with staff, you know, we do need, obviously, to develop some norms for that. And then you get down to the issue of enforcement and what happens there. So it's not, I don't think there's anything simple about this at all.
Cynthia, what's the next step on the redrafting the norms and then enforcing them?
Well, I think there are no consequences that I'm aware of listed.
Right.
So I think at best, the way they're drafted now, they're merely guidelines.
In crossing guidelines, who's going to reinforce that?
Well,
or enforce it?
You know, Mark and I both had conversations with council members about going around me or going directly to staff. Sometimes there are issues in the organization going on that even council members aren't aware of, personnel issues. And it can be a liability situation for the city to have council members getting into those areas. And so we've tried to discuss that in the past, have not had a tremendous amount of success with that.
Doug, what do we need to do?
Well, you know, like I said before, I'm at my wit's end of trying to figure out how to work with these two guys. It's clear to me their intent is to tip the boat over. So at this point, I think that the three of us need to try and carry on business. We can't stop them from continuing to throw rocks. We can't stop them from writing editorials in the newspaper. We can't stop them from, riling up the community. Only thing we can do is continue to do our best to do what's in the best interest of the city as a majority. I don't know where we go when we come up with an issue that we disagree on. I anticipate that's going to happen. We don't vote as a block all the time. Maybe we can work to find some consensus, which is what I always try to do. But we just have to keep plowing forward and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know whatever answer there is.
Well, the issue though, Mark, of staff intimidation or the perceived intimidation of staff coming in and intermingling with staff is clearly inappropriate.
Can I comment on that before Mark does?
You're the council member.
That is, I got to tell you, one of my main reasons for running for city council is because I was a long-time city employee. I was the public works director for the city. And one of my main issues when I ran for council was, number one, try to control the budget and don't let somebody spin this into oblivion. And number two, make sure the staff gets the support and the training and the tools that they need to do the best job that they can. That's all I'm after. I don't have any other political aspirations, and the behavior of a couple of our council members is undermining that completely. They play gotcha from the dais. They have a clear opportunity to ask staff a question and understand an issue so that when they speak from the dais, they can make their point and move forward with whatever the agenda is. But instead, they refuse to talk with staff, release something at the last minute, and then play gotcha with staff. And that's demoralizing to staff. Staff wants to have the answer when a question is asked. And when you come out of left field with them with a question and they don't have the answer, they feel like they failed the council. And that continuously demoralizes staff. And in addition, as I mentioned with what Mr. Hensley does, he's constantly making innuendos. When he speaks from the dais, he's constantly saying, mentioning the words malfeasance and secrecy and lack of transparency. Constantly, it's a constant hammer on staff to where it continues the demoralization. I don't know how we stop that.
Well, in the norms, quite often in the norms, there can be a policy in there in the norms that the mayor will call them out of order if they attack staff members from the dais. And I currently have 2 cities where this is just one solution, where the one council member in this particular council is not allowed to intermingle with staff in City Hall unless they go right to the city manager's office first and get permission.
Is that written in the norms? Or
yeah, it's written in the norms, but it's also...
By name?
Yep, and it's also enforced. It's a special memo coming out of the manager's office that you will not be interacting and undermining me by going to staff. Come to me for all your questions, to City Hall. And by the way, if you break it, I'll have you escorted out. 2 cities right now where that's the norm.
Are those norms a resolution, or what was the process for?
It went through council as a resolution. Yeah, you can't do this just because city manager made it up or city manager got together with the police chief to do it, but it's pretty formidable. But there's got to be some way of you have to protect staff. You cannot allow staff to be intimidated by any council member or any foreign intruder, just like going into a school with your children. You can't have and let people be invited in to sit in the classroom uninvited, just like you can't go into the workplace uninvited. You have to go through some authority if you want to do that.
You know, but you're pointing out things that was really clear when Doug and I got elected 8 years ago, 7 years ago, is that it was pointed out to us if we ever wanted anything, we'd go through the city manager.
You know, both of these guys have been sent to training multiple times. That issue has been discussed with them on multiple occasions. It's been explained what the process is, what the rules are, and they don't care, I guess. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, that's sorry. But I think in the norms it is perfectly within the scope of your being able to do that even coming in, if you were to decide that is you have some consensus on that could be one of the letters coming out of the city manager's office. It's not a request anymore. Of course, they can say, I'm not going to do it. That's okay. I mean, that's part of it. But if it's more formalized, then you can do that. Any problem with that legally, Mark?
I want to review the cities you've talked about and look at what they've implemented. And I mean, generally, all the council members have the same rights unless they do engage in certain conduct, and they can potentially lose rights. And I'd want to look at closely what those 2 cities have done and make sure we're being
equally fair.
Equally fair.
Mm-hmm. Well, it has to balance out, but it doesn't rise to the level of there were complaints from the 2 cases I'm talking about that are currently going. There were complaints coming from staff that they were intimidating and it was creating a hostile work environment for them.
We have that situation here.
And that's why I'm saying is that if you have a near and perceived present danger, how much research are you going to do?
I have a question. It sounds like we're on to changing some operational kind of policies, but it really points to consequences. And I think too that there have been several times where we have felt that information that is discussed in closed session has actually been leaked out into the public and or to an interested third party. And we don't have anything in our norms of spelling out what do we then do if, because that would be somebody's action, but what are then the consequences?
But I thought, Mark, that's a misdemeanor.
Yeah, it's covered in the Brown Act. We cover that. It gets covered in AB 1234 training. It's covered, explained to council members when they are sworn in. It's reaffirmed from time to time. And I think everyone's aware that that's the rule. The difficulty is if there's a violation, you might think there's a violation because the information that was discussed is now out in public. The problem is connecting the dots of how did it get there.
And who did it?
And who did it.
And who's going to play the cop to go find the answer? Because it's certainly something you don't want to send your police department out chasing wild gooses for. I think that's why you look at the integrity of council members to follow the rules.
Yeah, just I just had a conversation with a county supervisor about the same thing. There was a former supervisor, and I was told that he was notorious for that, but there was never any way to prove it. Releasing closed session information.
Well, along those lines, we recently had a situation where the city attorney sent council an email and said, hey, look, we have this party that is willing to work with us to settle an issue.
Yeah, let's keep it very general so that we don't have any waiver of attorney-client privilege.
So it's not only closed session, release of information from closed session that places the city in a harmful situation, but it's blatant release of information contrary to the best interest of the city, intentionally, after being told that what would happen. And so, that could cost us a lot of money. And I just, once again, I just don't understand, and then they throw up transparency. You can be so transparent that you end up negotiating against yourself, which is what's happening here. And they're not part of the action relative to what's in the best interest of the city. They have their own personal agenda that they're marching to without regard to the cost to the city. And you can't legislate that behavior to stop. I mean, they're voted, they're an elected representative. They can do what they want.
And the other truth is you can't fire a councilman.
Can't unelect them.
Right? But you can take them off committees.
Can I add something too, is that when that HUD letter got out, we believe it was one of the, we don't know how it got out, but it was out. And it was sent to one of the press. And that letter that was posted on the World Wide Web had the city's bank account informations on it. And it was out there for everyone to see. And clearly, if we could have had the, given the opportunity for the city manager and city attorney to craft a letter for the public to know what was going on here, that information would have been redacted. And instead, it went out on the World Wide Web. We caught it maybe about 8 hours, 12 hours after it had been posted. But we had to put a high alert with our banks about that because it was for everyone to see. And that clearly is, you know, you sit there and say, so was that intentional? And was it really to really very much harm us? But those are the kinds of actions that we're having to deal with now.
Well, at least it was poor judgment. And again, following, as Mark was saying, following the trail and finding out who did it is kind of a fruitless. You could have somebody on somebody's trail all the time.
Can I go back to one of the issues about morale within the city?
Sure.
So back, I think it was a month ago, you know, now that we're sitting in the end of October, about 6 weeks ago, there was a Jewish holiday that we had actually selected that day to do a State of the City address. And so Councilmember Fig had the inspiration that Monday at council meeting, and he apologized for the city, and he said that, you know, it was that we should have known that it was, you know, a Jewish holiday, and, you know, almost to the point of, you know, how dare we do that? And he threw us all under the bus, everybody, the staff and city council. And we find out then the next day that he clearly not only once but twice was sent an email. Like all of us, the rest of us were sent an email. We communicate a lot that way with our city clerk. And she was asking, does anybody have an issue with the state? And I think, you know, Councilmember Sharkey said, well, you know, it is a Jewish holiday. I'm not Jewish though, and so it is where I said, you know, of all the weeks and days that work, that day works the best for me, and we can do a, you know, morning breakfast with the chamber, and then do something new and divide the community out to hear the state of the city, because if they don't attend the chamber meeting, maybe they're not getting some of the information. So clearly wanted to bookend kind of a meeting and take that approach. And not only once, but twice, Councilmember Fig received that email and never bothered to tell our city clerk that that was a Jewish holiday. And he gets up then that Monday and berates the city and our staff about how we missed it. And then we find out the next day that he had failed to make that comment or to even say that, hey, there is an issue with the state. And so there's all of that kind of, you know, positioning in the public this, but instead, when you start peeling back the onion, you realize that there was a failure to communicate here. And for that failure, then we all get thrown under the bus.
You know, and the clerk did a lot of work on this. We went through several days trying to find a date, and then to, you know, come out in public and basically complain about the job she'd done. It's not fair. It's not fair.
So we have a number of issues. First of all, it's the brought up the issue of passing out materials at council meeting. Sometimes they're tombs of materials, and how appropriate that is, or whether council wants to have a policy about receiving things at the last minute.
I think we also need to tighten up our policy on how items get placed on the agenda. Right now, it's pretty much any council member can put any item on the agenda. I think there should be a process regarding that.
Okay. Is this the place to do that, or is this something that goes on an agenda where we review the norms on a study session? Or do you want to see some norms come back, Cynthia? I mean, you're the orchestrator of this. Is it too late in your term, or is that an interim job, or What do you think? Because we're making a list.
I think council norm is a good place for it, because then we'll arrange the process to meet with whatever the norm is. We kind of have implemented, I'll say, an informal process where council comments is the venue where a council member can ask for an item to be placed on the next agenda. That's how it works now. What that doesn't accommodate then, if a council member says, I want item X brought out to the next council meeting, that does not preclude them from coming with voluminous documents and everything else for the next meeting. In some cases, it's been competing presentations with staff. So, and we don't see it until the very last minute.
It goes back to the notion, though, of council doing staff work.
But
what
that's not what we're here to do. I mean,
the problem is obviously, council members have a right to speak their mind and make a presentation
right
on an item. I don't really see a way to regulate that so much. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of, last minute technical stuff handed to you on the day of the meeting, but then that doesn't mean that the council has to accept it or do anything with it either. We may consider it if it looks interesting. We may continue things to the next meeting, but that in and of itself is not a burden on staff. Because we're not asking staff to respond to that. I mean, I know staff wants to be prepared for that,
right? So
they can answer the questions about it. But and that's sort of a matter for the council and the meeting to deal with, I would think.
I'm okay with that.
So the issue of having materials passed out at meetings, you're okay that can take place?
Wow, what we've seen though have been dissertations,
If you do an hour-and-a-half presentation, is that too long?
By a council member?
Yeah.
Yeah, by one.
What do you want? I mean, if 2 of you or 3 of you did that, you're asking for chaos. And they're doing staff work. Why wouldn't it go to staff? To integrate it in.
One thing that I want to point out that we had discussed at our strategic planning session early on this year is the fact that there were a couple of requests made to be better prepared for meetings and to have material 7 to 10 days out versus just 3 days out, which is typically how the agenda and the packets get ready for us to then review the information. And in those 3 days, we have opportunity to talk to a city manager and get some of our questions answered so that we don't wait to the meeting to launch all the questions, but have some of the issues then resolved before we get there. And so I believe it was both Councilmember Fig and Hensley that said, we'd like to get this information out even earlier, but yet they're the biggest abusers of it. And so we said, great idea. We could staff then prepare, and it was agreed upon that, yeah, we'd get the information early. But for those that wanted it, they're not the ones that followed it, which is unfortunate then.
Well, going back to the issue of if you want a different guideline for putting things on the agenda, that's something you could ask the city manager to prepare for you. And just to give her a help on that, any council member under council comments, it sounds like, can ask for an item to be agendized. Do you have any guideline that says at least 2 council members have got to do it to make it a list? Or do you run the risk of 1 council member can put on a whole agenda of items without control? And I've seen that happen a few times. How do you want to do that?
So there was something, I believe, even a policy like back in the late 2008, 2009 that had originally said, you know, we needed a consensus to then put an agenda item on, and that was removed, you know, at that time because we felt that, you know, we could work together on that, and the items on the agenda were few and far between coming from a council member or the mayor pro tem or mayor, you know, so we were able then to be disciplined about it and to act when there was something big. And so I think even each year there might have been one issue that Councilmember Sharkey did, and one issue that, you know, Mayor Pro Tem Breeze did, and one issue that maybe, but it wasn't ongoing. Now we have a very different situation.
So it was reasonable.
It was very reasonable, and I think we considered our time and effort about that.
Okay.
And not the case anymore.
Well, actually now the council has to agree to put it on the next agenda. We do have that.
Okay.
I don't know if it's spelled out, but that's what we've been doing.
That's a control.
But there aren't any parameters.
There's no parameters.
Yeah.
I'd like to sort of take a different direction because we've got a few minutes to cover the interim city manager process, and I promised that we would do that before 11:30. Would you, maybe Cynthia, it'd be a good idea for you to review for us?
Lunch up.
Yes, review for us what you understand the council has decided about the interim city manager.
Sure.
And I want to take one extra step, council, and ask you, what do you want that interim to do? Because it really does make a difference on the person you select.
Who you at?
Growing food for catering?
Yes, no.
There's the one that answers that question.
Yeah, he's on his way.
Yeah. Well, Carly's there.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the last closed session report out, the city attorney reported out that I was being given direction to consult with you and another consulting group and myself to try to get some interim city manager candidates that they could talk to, and also work towards the recruiting process for a permanent to assist with that. So that was my instructions. Attorney can weigh in. That's what he reported out at the meeting, but you know, he can confirm that.
Mark?
That's what occurred.
Okay. So did you come to some agreement about payment for that person?
No, it was really just to look for people.
Okay. So you're going to look for people without a price.
Well, from the permanent standpoint, we would be working with a recruiting agency.
But I'm
So
talking about the interim.
part of that process.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the interim. And when is your understanding, council, that you wanted this person to come aboard?
I'd like to have an interim on board by December 1st, and that gives them 3 weeks, really only 10 days, to get up to speed by the outgoing city manager. So I'd like to have them on board by December 1st. And my opinion is that we should establish a committee to
Interview?
No, to recommend to the council to interview.
Okay. How many?
I'd say no more than 3 for an
Okay.
interim.
Okay.
And that we need to move forward on that fairly quickly.
Okay.
So establish a committee, have the committee recommend to the council. I think we should interview these 3 guys, have the council interview them.
3 people.
Three people?
Yeah.
And choose one of them for the, oh no, it's the whole council. You know.
Yeah, I got you. No, I was referring to, there may be some women city managers in that group. You said guys, and I was just generalizing.
Oh, I see.
I'm sorry. That's
fine.
It wasn't a gotcha, just clarifying.
It's a non-gender specific guy.
Yeah. Okay, so that's your recommendation, John. Weigh in on that process.
That sounds good to me. And where are we now? We're at the end of October. Yeah, that should be plenty of time, I would think.
Give
them on board by December.
Just to get an interim on board, it'll obviously take longer for a permanent, but who knows, maybe there's a
I
problem.
want to take our time looking for a permanent. It's gonna,
unless Superman shows up.
right, unless Superman shows up, I want to make sure that they understand the issue.
Supergirl.
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. So I want to make sure that those candidates understand the situation that the city's in, fully understand it. I don't want anybody to be surprised about any issues at the city. I want them to be prepared to deal with the issues when they get here.
Okay.
I agree that we need to have an interim on board no later than December 1st.
So the recommendation then is to have a committee of a couple. Do you want to appoint that committee?
How about the mayor pro tem?
Thanks.
What do you think of that idea?
That would be good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me throw out another recommendation just to make it simpler on this is, since I place about 10 or 12 in that group a year, the way they usually formulate it is they take the city manager's salary and the benefits divided by 12. So example is if the salary is 20 at 200,000 and the benefits are another 30, that's 2,300 divided into 12, and that's the pay range.
And I think the staff would prefer to have someone there as a buffer.
Oh, yeah. And there's no question, this can't be a part-time. No.
Okay. So any other detail? I'm not trying to get too detailed, but I wanted to make sure the clear marching orders so there's not any hang-ups along the way.
No, I think.
Okay. Now, the top 3 or 4 things that you want this interim to accomplish, and let me remind you some of the big, well, I don't have to remind you the big issues facing. You got to finish the budget. Are you going to have, is the budget going to be finished by the time you leave?
Yes, I would hope so.
You think?
Whether it gets passed or not, I don't know. We
Okay.
can't crystal ball that, but
Okay.
we're hopeful. I'll look to Al in the back of the room. It'll be done for sure before December 21st or.
Okay. So the other question that just comes to mind is, what about the vacant positions that are going to come? And this is going to come before council. Is it an interim job to help you fill those positions? Or do you want them to only have temps in there in the positions? And I'm thinking now of, well, the positions that are likely to be open. And what's the direction of council on those positions, and what do you want the interim to do if they're here 5 months, for example?
My opinion is that the interim city manager would use his or her best judgment regarding that issue. We can't put the city on hold. Let's say that we have an interim for 5 months and then we get a full-time, it's going to take that person 3-4 months, so now we're looking at a year of needing somebody. If the interim finds someone that he or she feels would be a good addition to staff, I think they should have the authority to hire.
Well, I think the interim, particularly in this case, needs to have full authority.
Yeah. Do what they feel is the best.
I don't think this is going to work at all if we put limits on the authority of the interim.
Right.
Full authority as well to hire then those positions that are going to come open.
But it is the understanding of council, and this is a question, Cynthia, until the day she leaves, is making the decisions.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that they is the co-CEOs for a period of time. She's still in charge until the day she leaves.
Correct.
Just so we're clear.
We're providing a spin-up window, sort of. Maybe 3 weeks, maybe less. I don't know if you have any leave time left or whatever.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, of course, I would make myself available even after I leave to the interim. I will say this, sometimes during the recruitment process, it is considered a good thing if a new city manager can build their own team. So I would just say, We will try on those positions that we know are vacant or will be vacant. We know Greg Brown has announced his retirement, and we're working currently to try to come up with a solution so that hopefully that won't be an issue. To the extent that we find there are others that may be leaving, we'll do similar kinds of things, and I'll try to get everything as tied up as possible. But as I indicated before, there are a number of people who are looking because of the issues, and so there's potentially other positions that might become available. I would just tell you that in a recruitment, and Bill, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that often is a positive for a candidate coming in.
I think it'd be an attraction if you ask the interim to appoint permanent people and not have the opportunity to reinvest in their whole team. It's a problem. I also think that to consider combining that when you go after a position, you have that recruiting firm bring you some options for interim, as opposed to saddling the interim city manager with a job of getting interims for finance, for community development, and all those others, because it's pretty easy.
And I will say, fit is incredibly important between the city manager and the department head level positions, especially. I mean, if you had someone that fit well with the interim's personality, but not with the new city manager, that could be an automatic and problem right out of the chute.
You're also going to impact whether or not you get best candidates, and the other is a very big issue.
Well, there's a judgment matter here to think a little bit, and I agree. And one of the things, a new full-time coming in is, if you look at the opportunity side, we'll have the opportunity to build an entire organization, basically. And yeah, there may, however, be reasons why an interim feels it necessary to put something more permanent in a position, but maybe not. But we assume that anybody we hire is going to have good judgment.
Okay, that's good. Any other things about the interim that are chads or unclear?
No, I think it's pretty clear.
Okay. Just so that I'm clear, let me give you about 3 minutes if there's any quick questions from the audience, and then we'll go, and then we'll be back at 1 o'clock opening up after the closed session. Some of you, if you need, can go eat, and if you want to come back. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that for the last hour, I think we've been stuck in destructive conflict. I thought the goal was to be at the constructive level. And, it takes two to tangle. And sitting here for the last hour, it's like, the three here are saying it's those two guys, it's those two guys. But, we all are flawed. And we all need to work together. Welcome to democracy. That's what it's all about. And I just hope, I really was disappointed that the situation deteriorated to that when the goal was to be at the constructive conflict point. So I'll just blame you for that. Just joking.
I'll take it.
But again, what I want to reiterate here is that, look, it's okay to disagree on policy issues. But, we got to talk to each other. We got to respect each other. Right? And with all due respect, Sharkey, I really wanted to interrupt you and say, okay, enough. Because the question to you was, what do you want to get out of this day? And you went down a laundry list of things that this guy, and I thought that was inappropriate. But one other thing I'd like to say is that everybody be careful with emails. When you send an email out to a gazillion people, it's discoverable. And any litigation, any email is discoverable. It's public information.
Absolutely.
So when you say things like these guys are going over there, but in your email you're saying if there is dysfunction, perhaps it's coming from the council member who absolutely refuses to even speak with staff. I thought that was the problem, that they were speaking with staff. But here on the one hand, you're saying the complete opposite. So again, we all do this, but as a council member, your emails are discoverable. Be careful.
Wait a minute. This is a council comment. Their comments now.
All I want to say is that if you're going to be sending emails out to people, you should expect them to be a part of a meeting. And I think that's all Jim was trying to do.
It's my turn now.
Just your turn.
Yeah. I thank you for giving us a perfect example of a gotcha. You've been waiting this whole time to read that email, and you finally did it, didn't you? And that's the destructive cycle. Okay? Why aren't the two council members here? You tell me that. You're a friend of at least one of them. Why weren't they here? Why did they walk out and I don't know if it's planned or not planned, but how can you have a conversation when people refuse to come? I've been hearing about transparency and openness, but when it comes time to look at transparency and openness in this situation, they took off. That's all.
Good. We're closed until...
Well, wait. I need to make an announcement. Sorry.
Okay.
Council will be meeting in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957, public employee appointment city manager. We also have 2 litigation matters as identified on the agenda. The item pursuant to 54956.9B3 relates to the facts and circumstances of the HUD letter that the city recently received. And then there's also a D4 item, which is initiation of litigation.
And if I could make a comment, we will need the cameras removed
Yes.
from and the microphone as well.
Since this was raised, this email issue, this is actually the newsletter of the Surfside for Homeowners Association. My comments were published, not only discoverable, but they were published. So there's nothing underhanded or questionable about this at all. And my statements are factual, and I stand by it.
So,
then we'll...
if you can take the materials, shut them off, and take them out of the room.
So then we'll recess to closed session.